G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of I Can't Leave Anything Alone. I trust you're doing well as always. It's been a few weeks since I posted the last video on Des when we did the wheels and tyres. Everything on the car is going really well. Enjoying driving it around, and it's serving my purposes really well for what I need it to be. But as you can see, it's sort of set up on the hoist behind us here because we are actually going to be doing another modification to the car today. And what we're actually going to be doing is fitting an upgraded intercooler. So I'll just give you a rundown of what we're doing and why I'm doing it. So the intercooler sits in behind the front bumper bar there. You can just sort of see it sitting down in there. It sort of looks kind of like a radiator. And what its job is to do is to chill charged air. So basically how it works, turbocharger sitting in down there. It sucks air in through the air filter box, air goes in. The turbocharger spins the air, so the turbocharger is actually spun up by the exhaust. It creates positive boost pressure, which pushes charged air through this intercooler pipe. That's called the hot side pipe. It's just a rubber hose. So it pushes charged air through the hose into the intercooler core. Air passes through the core and then comes out chilled out of this hose and gets sucked into the engine through the throttle body. So as you're driving along and air is passing through the front of the car, air passes over the fins of the intercooler and chills the air that's inside the cooler. The problem is the factory intercoolers, although they are fairly efficient, they are a lot better than a lot of other vehicles. If you're doing extended periods of hard driving, so pulling up a steep hill for a long period of time, or if you're towing, or if you're off-road going up a track at slow speeds, you don't have that airflow going through the car at slow speeds, so the charged air gets quite hot. Or if you are moving at speed but you're towing, the turbocharger is creating a lot of boost pressure to try and keep that running, try and keep the engine making power. But there is a point where the standard intercooler starts to lose efficiency. Now you do have air temperature sensors, which is that sensor right there. So what that does is it monitors the temperature of the air that's going into the engine. And the hotter the air gets, the more the computer starts to pull power out of the engine, which is essentially when you need the power the most. So if you're pulling up a hill for a long period of time, inlet air temperatures start getting quite hot. The computer will say that air temperature is too hot, let's pull a bit of power out to be safe. And you're essentially pushing your accelerator harder down to try and get more power. And it just sort of goes into that vicious cycle. So that's sort of why. I do a fair bit of towing. I own a boat. We're also looking at getting a caravan to do some touring. So that's why I thought upgrading the intercooler would be a good way to go. So I'll show you the intercooler that we are going to be fitting. So this is the kit here that we are going to be fitting. It's through a company called PDI, which is Performance Diesel Intercoolers. These guys are based in Western Australia. So this is the kit that we are going to be using. So it is quite a large intercooler. I'll actually show you the standard intercooler versus this intercooler once it's off the car. It upgrades the rubber hoses to stainless steel pipes. We've got these silicone hose joiners that connects it all together. And we've also got these two adapters that get bolted onto the engine. So they actually replace the factory fittings. So it replaces the front plate on the throttle body and also the outlet on the turbo, because the factory fittings have these spring clamps with an O-ring that sits inside here. So these little spring clamps or spring clips retain the pipe on, and there's an O-ring inside here that seals it. The issue is if you're in the middle of nowhere and one of these hoses fail on the factory system, so one of these hoses split, which does happen over time on some makes and models of cars, or the O-ring inside here fails, it's very hard to try and find a replacement hose or a replacement O-ring to keep you on the road. Whereas the worst that can happen with this system by converting it back to silicone hose joiners is one of these will split, and it's a lot easier to find one of these if you're in the middle of nowhere, just through like any general auto parts shop, or worst comes to worst, you can replace it with like a bit of truck radiator hose or something like that. So those two fittings replace the two fittings on the engine. Then we've got the pipes, the intercooler pipes, the intercooler itself, and you've got some hose clamps and there's some brackets and fittings there. This kit does do pre-facelift Fortuner and Hilux as well. So with this one being the 150 kilowatt engine, this does the old one as well. So we might not need all of that stuff, but what we're going to do is we're going to get into it, start pulling it apart. What I'm going to do is start by pulling the nudge bar off with the light bar on it. I will pull the grill off, we'll pull the headlight trims off, we'll pull the top plastic shroud off, the bottom plastic shroud off, and we'll undo the front guard liners as well to get to the bumper bar mounts. All of the stuff that I'll remove first, you will have seen in previous videos or when I've done other things like the snorkel and the transmission cooler and the nudge bar and all that stuff. So I'll get it to the point where I've done things before that you've seen, and then we'll go through about taking the rest of the front bumper bar off. So we'll get into that now. For all you train spotters out there, you probably will have noticed this turbo in the background of this video. 100%, this is definitely not for Des. This is just a cheap eBay special turbo that came up on Facebook Marketplace for really, really cheap. It's brand new. I decided to buy it. Got absolutely no idea when I want to put it on, but I've just picked it up and it's just sitting there. But I just wanted to clarify that is not going on this car. Okay, so this is where I'm up to. I've gone ahead and taken the top cover off. I've taken the grill out. I've taken those metal support brackets off that go across from the top of the rad support to the grill. I've taken the nudge bar off, the plastic undercover off. I've unscrewed the front section of the guard liners, so they're just hanging out there. I undid the 10mm bolt that's up in that corner, and I've also just unclipped the side of the bumper bar, so that just pulls out, giving it a little bit of a pull. So now I'll go through and undo these top 10mm bolts holding the top of the bar off, unplug the wiring for the bar, and that should be it with getting the bar off. Right, so after I undid those 3 10mm bolts, I was able to pull the front bumper bar off. I just had to unplug the wiring on both sides. So there's one plug for the parking sensors, one for the park light, one for the indicator, and one for the fog light. So that was all pretty straightforward. So next up, what I'm going to do is remove this plastic reinforcement piece. I will unbolt and remove the horns and also the bonnet latch and the bonnet latch support. So go through and get all of that done. All right, I think I've got out of the way everything that needs to get out of the way for now. I've just dropped the transmission cooler down as well and just got that hanging out there. So that's all sort of done. Intercooler is all exposed now. You can get a good look at the factory cooler. So that's a factory core. It's got these plastic end tanks on it, which then go to a plastic pipe. And then the rubber hoses, I've already gone through and removed the 2 rubber intercooler hoses off. And they just clip off. They've got the same retainers as what this setup is. So you've got these 2 little tabs here on the spring. Just push them both up. And as you're pushing it up, you just jiggle the pipe off with your hand. So that's that. But before I go too much further, I'm actually just going to go ahead and change these fittings on the engine, or these adapters. So I'm going to start with this one. That's just held on with those 4 10mm bolts on each side. And it's also got this air temperature sensor in the bottom, which I've already unplugged. That sensor will come out and screw into the actual intercooler pipe. But I just want to fit these up first, just make sure that all fits before I go too much further. And then I'll change this one. That's just held on with 2 bolts. So I'll go through and change them now. Alrighty, those adapters are all on. So I got that 4-bolt one that goes onto the front of the throttle body there, all fitted up perfectly. And then we've got the other one that goes onto the turbo outlet there, all fitted up perfectly. And I'll show you the ones that came off. So there's the one that originally goes onto the turbo outlet. That's the one that goes onto the throttle body. That's where the air temperature sensor goes in and just picks up a signal through that hole there. And I've removed that temp sensor and screwed it into the intercooler pipe there. So next step is to remove the plastic pipes off the side of the intercooler. So they're just held on with those 2 spring retainer clips and also a couple of 10mm bolts on each. So we'll get that off now. They're both off. They're just now hanging out down here with the rest of the factory pipes and hoses. I've also disconnected, I think it's a boost reference hose. That just goes onto that little dot right there. So now all that's really left is undo the 2 10mm bolts that hold the cooler in place and then lift it out. Alrighty, that's all pulled apart, all gone, factory cooler out, see you later. So I've just put them down here side by side so you can have a little bit of a comparison as to how they look. So physically, the surface area of the PDI cooler is a lot larger. You can see on the factory cooler where the mount is just here. It's got like this little bracket that comes off to the side and meets the core. Whereas on the PDI one, it utilizes that space with more intercooler space. physically a lot taller, a little bit wider, but also 50% thicker. So if we measure up this cooler, the factory one, it's 50 mil wide, whereas the PDI cooler is 75 mil wide. So 50% thicker as well. So all in all, a lot larger. So we'll just go ahead and put this on the front of the car now. I've already swapped over the factory mounts into those holes. Done that on both sides. So yeah, we'll just go through and put that in. Okay, intercooler is all on. It's all bolted in. So before I go too much further with putting stuff back together, the first thing I'm going to do is start putting the intercooler pipes on, the new pipes. Just want to make sure everything all fits up, and then we'll go through and start putting things back together. I can already tell I'm going to have to modify my brackets for my transmission cooler that I previously made. They're probably not going to fit. But yeah, we'll just go through and put those pipes on now, and yeah, we'll check back in once that's done. Cool, that's all in and looking awesome. Did have to take that headlight out to get that intercooler pipe in. Faffed around with it for ages, and then as soon as I took the headlight out, it just popped straight in. So it's all looking good. I've put a little boost reference hose on as well for that little fitting in the bottom tank. So I've just cable tied it to the intercooler pipe. So that's all looking good. And this side sort of turned out like that. So that's all looking good as well. So now I'm just going to go and start putting everything back on. I'll get it to the point where the front bumper bar is ready to go back on, and I'll touch base again once we're at that stage. Sick. Well, that's all back together now. Didn't have to do too much modification on the transmission cooler brackets. I just ended up spacing them out and putting a longer bolt in there to space it out. The bottom mount was fine, just those two top mounts. Everything's sort of gone back on. The only things I had to modify was this plastic reinforcement piece, because the transmission cooler is sitting forward a bit more. It was getting too close to the back, so I did just trim that out a little bit. And also these air guides, just had to trim them a little bit short. I took about 10 mil off them, 15 mil off them, because they were touching the side of the intercooler. So yeah, that's all done now. So now we'll go through and start putting the rest of the car back together. We'll get the bumper bar on and all that, and I'll do another update shortly. And we're just about there. I've just got the grille to go on and the chrome headlight trims and then the top cover. I just wanted to give you an update as to where we're at. So it's all going back together quite well. Everything's all plugged in behind the bar. Even the light bar's all plugged in. So I'll finish getting it all back together now, and I'll give you a look once she's all done. And that's job all done, all finished. Just got to take it off the hoist and take it for a test drive. You can definitely see it sitting inside there though. It's a bit more obvious than the factory one. Well, anyway, we'll take it for a drive, see how it goes. And that's it, guys. Another job on Des is done. I've just taken it for a drive, and I must say I'm quite happy with how the car drives now. I thought there'd be a little bit of turbo lag being a larger intercooler, but the turbo lag is exactly the same. The car definitely feels like it pulls up hills a lot easier. It could just be a mental thing, but to me it just feels like it does. It feels like it comes up to speed just under normal acceleration better as well. Obviously the air going into the engine now is colder, which means the air is denser, which does technically mean the car should go a little bit better, but you know, it is what it is. I didn't do that for chasing power. I just did it for keeping temperatures down more so. I just want to reiterate as well, the car is not tuned. I do not plan on getting it tuned, at least not in the foreseeable future. How it is now mechanically is how it's going to stay. So yeah, so that's it. Well, thanks always for watching. I do appreciate the support. Always remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more content, and we'll see you in the next video. Take it easy, guys. Be good.